Hello, and welcome to another exciting, or we'll see how exciting, edition of the Seth and Gentry Show. I'm Seth Emerson with the Telegraph. This is
Gentry Estes, Dogs 24/7.
Now, Gentry, we're sitting here in between Clemson and South Carolina for the Georgia football team, and we don't want to spend the whole time talking about the Clemson game. We want to break down South Carolina as much as we can, but don't want to skip over what happened at Clemson. Major game. How big a loss?
Well, I mean, it's a non-conference game, so you can overcome it. It's the first game of the year, so you can overcome it. But, I think Georgia was exposed in several areas that they're obviously going to have to improve this week. And, you can go either way. It's such a risk-reward thing when you play a team like that in the first game because you can lose that game, and they did, but you learn a lot about yourself. And it's going to be really interesting to see, how they're able to bounce back against arguably a better team.
The line of scrimmage on both sides was, to me, what stood out. We could sit here and beat up on the offensive line more. We'll get to that with South Carolina. I don't think we can really add much. Everyone saw what happened between the penalties and the blocking. Defensively, the front seven for Georgia was worrisome. I said a key for Georgia was stopping Clemson from establishing the run, because then you could attack Taj Boyd a little bit. You could send Leonard Floyd and Jordan Jenkins, and they were doing that early in the game, but then they couldn't do that in the latter half of the game because Roderick McDowell all of a sudden was going wild.
I think they got wore down. Not on the D-line necessarily, but in the secondary certainly, and some of the
and the linebackers too. That's why I said front seven. They substituted on the front. Chris Wilson was talking to me about that yesterday. They did live up to that. They substituted in the front, but they didn't substitute much in the back.
No, it was as we've seen for 3 years and everywhere else. And I do think they did a good job substituting on the D-line. But no, you didn't see the linebackers. You didn't see Herrera and Wilson out at all, hardly, unless there was a reason. Leonard Floyd played basically the whole game, unless he asked out for getting
various
reasons
in
the private area.
Yeah.
But the secondary was mostly the same. I mean, you didn't see Sheldon Dawson at all in this game at cornerback. You didn't see James Charlie at all in linebacker. I mean, so there wasn't the substituting. But if we're going to sit here and point at reasons they lost this game, that's pretty far down the list to me.
Because ultimately, 38 points is a lot, but the defense got off the field more than they did, which going in.
I thought the defense was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I think
if they'd given up a few more field goals instead of touchdowns, it would have been, we'd be sitting here talking about how great the defense played.
Well, and it was just one of those games that really did come down to 3 or 4 plays and things here and there that if they go Georgia's way, penalties no question.
Which Mark Richt said that's supposed to be the mature side of the ball, and it was not.
No, and I felt like Richt was pretty critical yesterday for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't usually do that, but to say they look like first graders out
right.
there. I mean, clearly I think they were expecting a lot more from the offensive line than what they got. I think we all were. I think that offensive line, to be as experienced as they are, to have the depth that they have, they mixed and matched so much this preseason. You just got the sense that the coaches were looking for something that they still hadn't seen, and I'm not sure they've still seen it.
Do you think that was the problem, is the mixing and matching and not having a consistent, or was it a symptom of the disease, which is they don't have guys they know this guy has to be the left tackle, this guy has to be the left guard, this guy has to be
I think it's a symptom of that, because if guys had been playing positions that they weren't playing last year, then maybe. Like, for instance, John Theus was supposed to play some at right guard. We all thought that was going to happen. That's the way it was at practice. That's what Theus was saying. Turns out they didn't think he was ready for that. They ended up playing Canarius Gates at right guard instead. So I think that they tried some things, but they kind of wound up reverting back to what they knew worked, which was last year. And, and it wasn't a complete bust. They did have some good moments.
They lost by 3 are you talking about the O-line or the team in general?
Well, both, really.
Well, okay, they lost by 3 on the road to a top 10 team. It's not the end of the world. The sun at the moment is now shining right on us and moved on us. So the segue I would say is the sun can still shine on Georgia. How do you like that? Sorry. So that segues us at least to South Carolina. Now, first off, I was pretty surprised to see the line the way it was. It started at Georgia by 6, I want to say, 5.5 or 6. It's already moved down to 3, but Georgia's still favored. I sat there in the press box after the game and I told somebody, don't let me pick Georgia. They just can't. I can't. You were going in kind of skeptical before the season started about Georgia's ability to beat South Carolina. Did it just reinforce it for you?
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest, as I sit here and we're doing this Wednesday afternoon, we're probably going to post it on Thursday.
Yeah.
But as we sit here right now, I have no idea who's going to win this game. Yeah. I really don't. I can't sit here and make a prediction because, you just don't know what you're going to get from Georgia on the offensive line. With what it looked like against Clemson, and I hate to keep harping on this, but with what it looked like against Clemson,
harp on it.
It reminded me a little bit of South Carolina last year. You had a defense that swarmed them and overwhelmed them. But to sit here and
the offensive line.
Yeah, to sit here and say, that's what's going to happen every week. You don't, because they played pretty well against Florida last year, Alabama. So
here's the way I look at it, Gentry. When you look at the line play and the other side of the ball too, South Carolina, 4 starters I think returning on the O-line. They looked really good against North Carolina, and Mike Davis, running back, actually from the state of Georgia. Not that Georgia missed on him, because they did pretty well in that class too. But that kind of, going in, I kind of thought that Marcus Lattimore not being a factor anymore was really going to help Georgia this year in terms of beating them. And then Mike Davis and that O-line looks really good. And so now you wonder whether that is a factor. So I go in, my head tells me you can't pick Georgia just because games are won in the trenches. But something in my gut tells me that you're going to see Georgia respond this week.
All right, number one, it's here. It's in Athens.
Yeah. And 2 years ago, Georgia coming off the Boise State loss when they looked bad, much worse than they did this past week.
The offensive line in particular looked bad.
They made a big week 1 to week 2 improvement. That game could have gone either way.
They did, and there's a precedent for them making that kind of improvement that people might not expect. And let's look at the defense too. I mean, I've read all this about Georgia can't tackle and Georgia can't do this and that.
Don't take away my angle for tomorrow, by the way, because that's what I'm writing.
Is the first game. A lot of that to me was common for what you would see in a first game, especially with so many young, inexperienced players out there. Let's not forget who they were playing. Oh, it was a terrible tackle by Damian Swan, but he's doing it against Sammy Watkins. This guy's going to be an NFL star. I mean, these
Taj Boyd's pretty good too.
Yeah, he was elusive. He made plays, and you could say, well, Georgia didn't wrap him up in sack. Look, this guy. Let's give some credit to. This is an experienced guy who made plays on his feet like that.
Trey Matthews was actually the one that had the biggest missed tackle on that 4th down. If he wraps that up, then Georgia gets the ball back. It's still 31-28 at that point.
And how many college games had he played before that? How many times has he had a tackle like that?
With a full week of being healthy and prep now, maybe he makes that tackle.
It sounds like an excuse when you say it like that, but I think the defense will get a lot better.
We haven't even mentioned, maybe you were about to, 3 letters that could be the key here. Josh, Harvey, Clemens.
And that's why I think the defense will get a lot better. Yeah. And it's not just him. I think Corey Moore's going to play a lot in this game, and I think those are 2 players that both have been known as pretty hard hitters.
I'll focus more on Josh Harvey Clemens. I'm still not totally convinced Corey Moore starts over Connor Norman at the strong safety when Harvey Clemens is at the star. But
you want to bet?
Well, no, because you usually win these kind of bets. But Connor Norman will play. All right, Josh, the point I'm trying to make, I'm calling him a name in my mind right now that I can't say on the air because we don't know the editing function here. But the point I'm making is Josh Harvey Clemens is the difference maker.
We don't endorse gambling either, by the way. Just sorry, go ahead.
That was like 5 minutes ago.
Well, I said, do you want to bet?
Oh, that part. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the line.
After we talked about a point spread.
Yeah.
It's for us not endorsing gambling.
It's funny, when I covered South Carolina, Steve Spurrier always brought up the point spread. And he did it without any, Mark Richt never brings up the point spread. 2 different kind of guys. But anyway, I think Harvey Clemens makes a big difference if you believe everything that everyone says about him, because we've never really seen him except for the G-Day game. He hardly played last year, but you can't see where I'm pointing right now, but I'm pointing over at Ty Grantham's seat where he usually sits and talks to us, and I'll have a story going later in the week with his comments. Ty Grantham doesn't gush about a lot of players. He kind of says the same thing about a lot of different guys. He gushed about Josh Harvey Clemens. And I don't know how much of that was...
And has before.
Yeah, but he has before. Some of that could have been, well, what a difference he could have made if he was at Clemson. But we're going to see. I don't know if Georgia beats Clemson with Josh Harvey Clemens.
He was out there at Clemson.
He would have made a difference, but and we're going to see how much of a difference he is, how much of an exciting player he is. He's a guy... he's a unique talent that they can put all the way back at strong safety or bring down to play with his hand on the ground.
Well, and you look at also in that first game, I mean, you can make the case that at one point in that game, Georgia was without 3 of the best, we'll say 5 players on the team.
Yeah, we had this argument in the press box. Well, it wasn't an argument.
Malcolm Mitchell, Todd Gurley was limited, and you didn't have Harvey Clemens. And I really would make the case that those are three of the best 5 players on the team.
Yeah, Gurley came back, but he was out for a stretch. You could argue this game was lost for Georgia in the second quarter because that's when they could have really put their foot down. Not put the game away, but I mean, Marlo Herrera makes that interception. That was in the second quarter, wasn't it? It was at some point where, I don't remember exactly where it was, but Georgia was up 21-14, and they had some opportunities, and they were doing it without Todd Gurley.
There were a couple of times where they had the ball up 7, 21-14, and you could say this is the time to put your foot down, but penalties, there were several possessions.
I'm not sure Malcolm Mitchell would have made a difference too much because of the time to pass.
Well, they didn't throw the deep very much.
They couldn't.
Clemson played very soft on them and kept giving them.
O-line's got to block against South Carolina, or else there will be nothing in the way of the passing game. I'm not nothing, but not enough to make a difference.
Here's my concern if you're Georgia in this game, and it comes from watching that game last year. There was not a team that Georgia played last year that overwhelmed them the way South Carolina did. They crowded the box. They pressed all the receivers. They just basically pushed them around.
Yeah.
At position by position.
This is not a Steve Spurrier finesse kind of team.
And with what you saw at Clemson, you're not really encouraged on that front from the offensive standpoint. Now, I really do think Georgia's defense is going to play pretty well in this game, but I think that offensively you have got to match their physicality. And where you're concerned is, can they do it? I mean, is that just something that was it a matter of they weren't playing hard enough? Was it a matter of technique? Was it a matter of motivation? I mean, what was it, and can you discover what it is enough to not let what happened last year happen again?
To me, I think we all know about Jadeveon Clowney, but to me, the key for Georgia in this game is going to be, if I had to name one key, it's going to be stop Connor Shaw from running the ball and making plays with his feet, not just scrambling for first downs, but rolling out and buying some time. If Georgia can hold Connor Shaw in check, then I think they've got a pretty good chance to win this game.
And I think they've got a better defense to do that this year than last year. I think they're a little quicker
Josh
on their feet.
Harvey Clemens out there spying, and Leonard Floyd
Let's
could be doing
say you got
that.
Harvey Clemens on one side and Leonard with Jordan Jenkins and Leonard Floyd.
Yeah,
No, that's a lot of speed.
That's something.
That's a quick group.
Any final thoughts, Gentry?
It's going to be real interesting to see. I think you don't normally see seasons that hinge on 2 top 10 games to start the year, but that's what Georgia's facing right now.
It is. If you win this game, I think, not that last week is forgotten, but it's kind of canceled out. They're in the driver's seat in the SEC East. If they win this game, everyone will know that if they run the table, they can still go, be playing for the national championship. They lose this game, national championship's off the table.
I think
and
SEC
the division
is right. South Carolina's schedule's easier this year, and Georgia's is tougher.
This is an important game for the program, the way Florida was like 2 years ago. But in terms of this season, right now this is the game of the season.
No doubt.
Dictates the whole course. All right, talk to you all next week.